I finished 15th in that moto, but I was the third 125 home. So behind some big names. I think it was Steven Sword who was the first 125, and then it was Jeff Dement, and then it was me. And then the following week or two, I broke my wrist, which was another defining moment in my career where it
Put
was
a
a
break
fork
on
in the
things a
road.
bit.
Yeah, and I ended up pushing too hard to come back too soon, as one does. And I did a Sheffield Supercross or some Supercross in the UK. I cased a triple and broke it again. And
Oh,
that was kind of the defining factor in my career, I would say.
right, Rich. So obviously, I mean, you mentioned earlier in the chat that you rode overseas. Where did you end up racing? You know, what was that about? It seems to be quite all over the show.
Yeah, it was. It was all over the show. So the first race that I did was, I think it was a German or European type championship in a German town called Bulletin. It was called an ADAC championship, so it was German, European. There were lots of Europeans that rode that series. And actually I ended up finishing third. So that was in the year 2000. So that was the year that I won the Pro Mini Cross Class Championship. And my form was good on the 85, and I was at a good level, and I went over there and I got a third. And I actually beat some good names. I think I beat Max Nagel. Uh, and this was obviously when we were kids, when the level was a little bit more equal. I was racing with Tanel Leok. There were some other big names in there. So that was my first taste. I ended up doing the Junior World Championships later that year in Germany, but it was super muddy, and I ended up jumping off the track and breaking my wrist, so didn't finish that. The following couple of years, I did a bit of Dutch nationals or Dutch championship races, and then eventually I moved to Scotland in 2003 for the year. I lived in Scotland, but we did British Championship, and I struggled in the beginning. And this is what will happen with most South African riders, unless you're a Langston or or an Albertine. It's just I'm not going to say it's impossible, but the chances of it happening are really slim. Where somebody from South Africa is just going to go over there and destroy everybody. There is going to be some form of struggle, which in hindsight is a good thing, because I mean, if you just went over and dominated, then there's nobody really pushing you. So it keeps that carrot dangling in front of you. So I did struggle in the beginning in that British Championship. I don't know if I struggled to qualify, but I certainly was around the 17th, 18th position in the first couple of races. And then I started finding my form. So I did the Hawkstone International, the first race, and I don't even know if I got top 20. And then we did a British Championship around my birthday in May. And I ended up getting a fifth in the one moto, which was incredible. I was like 16, 17.
No.
And I started showing a bit of potential, which was great. And then that day, what they did at the end of the day is they'd have the 125 and the 250 class, and I was riding 125s. And at the end, they'd have a super final where they'd take the top 20 125s and top 20 250s and put them together. And obviously, the 125s, unless you were a James Stewart kind of caliber rider, you weren't really going to crack top 10. But so I finished top 5 in the 125s, did that super final race, and in the super final I was the third 125 home. So I finished 15th in that moto, but I was the third 125 home. So behind some big names. I think it was Steven Sword who was the first 125, and then it was Jeff Dement, and then it was me. And then the following week or two, I broke my wrist, which was another defining moment in my career where
Put
it
a
was a
break
fork
on
in the
things a
road.
bit.
Yeah, and I ended up pushing too hard to come back too soon, as one does. And I did a Sheffield Supercross or some Supercross in the UK. I cased a triple and broke it again. And
Oh,
that was kind of the defining factor in my career, I would say, in terms of an international standpoint. And then I dabbled in a few races there, here and there, but to be honest, it's not that it's a waste of time or money. It is a waste of money. It's expensive, but you're going there and you're riding on a different bike, you're riding different tracks, riding in different environments. The food tastes different. everything is different. So to
Yeah.
go there and do these one-off races is so hard. You need to go there and do months or years at
That
a
was one of
time.
my questions. Were you living in Germany, or did you just go in for the
Um,
race and then go back to South Africa?
so I remember at the end of 2002, I was staying when I was pulled out of school. I went and lived in Germany, or I think it was Belgium, with Tinus and the team there. He had a setup there in Belgium, and I lived there for a couple of months. That's when we did Dutch Championships, and I did a couple of World Grand Prix, and then obviously I came back to South Africa. I got this opportunity to race for this Planet Racing team in Scotland, which obviously I was super grateful for, and then went there. I was obviously 16, and I lived in Scotland for the whole year, and then came back, and then there were times where I lived in Texas for 4 months, and then stayed in Belgium for a month here and there, but it was never longer than that, and that's that in itself is something that can't really happen if you're trying to make it overseas. You need to be there for years at a time. I mean, you can come back for a holiday and perhaps ride in the summer on South African tracks, but the tracks are very easy here compared to this to Europe. So you need to be living there. That is for sure.
Yeah, the
Great.
tracks are very different. I mean, when I went over, we don't in my very sort of humble opinion, we don't quite have motocross tracks. We don't quite have supercross tracks. We've got like some form of a mixture between the two. And I mean, even when we have top guys from the States or Europe come ride our tracks, they can't. I mean, our guys hammer them.
Yeah,
It's an interesting one. It's a yeah.
yeah, it is tricky. It's been a South African problem for a while where we tend to build these tracks on flat ground. Obviously, the likes of Teza or Richards Bay motocross track, that's as close as European as what you'll get. Um, the old Rhino Park, my dad actually built that on the side of the hill there. That was a awesome track. Biased
It was
opinion there,
amazing.
but
Yeah.
there was big jumps and stuff. And South Africa used to be, back in the 90s, we used to have these massive jumps in early 2000s, massive jumps. So when at least you went overseas, you weren't worrying about that. You were worrying about corner speed and downhills and uphills. Those were the bigger things that certainly I worried about, and doing speed laps. But now, yeah, it is. It's kind of a mixture of these tight, not supercross, not motocross, but hybrid tracks where it does us an injustice in, in certain aspects for sure. Yeah.
We've almost become specialists at a sport that doesn't exist.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, our tracks are super unique to South Africa. And like you said, if the Euros, or if look, I mean, somebody that's at the highest level in our sport comes to South Africa, they're going to cream anybody. It goes without saying. However, maybe somebody that's maybe not at that highest level comes over, South Africans will give them a good run for their money. I mean,
No.
I've always said that South Africans on their home tracks are extremely fast. Um, just look at anybody. I mean, Kerem, the first name that comes to mind is Kerem. I mean, he went over to Canada and he's won nationals there. He's, I mean, you look at the level of South African motocross, and all you need is to get to that environment, and hard work and dedication, and the Afrikaans word vasbyt, or just absolute determination just to get to that high level. The base is there. The base is absolutely there. But that extra push that you need to get to that level is going to be found by being in those situations, practicing those tracks, racing those fast dudes and girls. And
Yeah.
you're not going to get that here. We have a level, but to get to that next level, you need to be there.